In this BMAR211 video lesson, we will cover the role of the physical environment in service delivery, and this is part of Study Unit 8, Chapter 10. A few learning outcomes: describe the role of physical evidence in the delivery of a service, explain the role and importance of the physical environment during service delivery using a proposed environment user framework, and then the third one, demonstrate the use of the physical environment as a means of differentiating a service organization from competitors. So 3 short outcomes and a very short unit. If you think back to the 5 dimensions covered in Chapter 2, tangibles, as a reminder, refers to the physical evidence associated with service delivery. Just as personal interaction communicates with a buyer, so does the physical evidence associated with the service delivery. It communicates service quality attributes, influencing customer expectations and helping to create the service experience. This informal communication is the focus of this chapter. Physical evidence, or the servicescape, in the context of service delivery, is the environment in which the service is delivered and in which the organization and the customer interact. It may also include tangible commodities that facilitate performance or communication of the service and describe the actual physical facility in which the service is performed, delivered, and consumed. Some service organizations use the physical environment exceptionally well to communicate with its service customers. If you have a look at the examples that you can see, what, in your opinion, is communicated by these 2 different restaurants? The first one, you can see it's filthy, it's disorganized, the leftover packages are on the table, and if you enter a venue like that, you will most likely turn around and leave and go to another place. But if you go to this restaurant, it's clean, it feels safe and inviting because the layout, as we will discuss, is nice, it's organized, and it feels in such a way that you want to go and dine at this place. The intangible nature of services makes tangible cues for service delivery exceptionally important, because how else can you judge a service if you don't have a physical cue to connect it to? In other words, because service delivery encompasses aspects that are difficult to evaluate, especially before the consumer actually buys, what the service organization communicates via tangible cues is particularly important. These tangible cues or aspects are not only used to evaluate the service before it is purchased, but also to assess potential satisfaction with the service during and after consumption. So in terms of the physical evidence, it's not necessarily when you enter the store. It might be you go onto their website or their Facebook page or Instagram page, and then you also get an idea of what the place looks like, and there are physical cues and the physical environment or evidence of the physical environment on those sites, if it's done properly. A wide variety of cues and aspects directly and indirectly linked to service delivery make up the physical evidence that can influence customer perceptions of service delivery. These include all aspects of the servicescape, and we will refer to the servicescape in this unit, as well as other tangible forms of communication. These forms of communication include the appearance of the building, staff, uniforms, signage, business cards, parking facilities, interior decor, layout, brochures, equipment, and other physical facilities. Physical evidence is, however, not of equal importance for all service organizations. On one hand, a call center used by an organization like MyWay, Outsurance, is often not even seen by the service customer, so then it's not that important. But where the customer directly or physically interacts with the service organization, that's where the focus should be. Let's have a look at physical evidence as a form of communication, because remember back to the 2 examples, that physical evidence of those diners or restaurants is some form of communication. It communicates a certain message or vibe to customers. What a consumer sees, hears, feels, or smells when entering a service environment invariably talks to the customer. Almost every element in the servicescape communicates to the receiver or to the recipient. The question is, however, whether the customer will experience the intended message or not. So it's not suitable or helpful if you have subliminal or unnoticeable cues that you feel that, why aren't my consumers noticing this? It needs to be clearly communicated and visible. There are 3 main types or elements of evidence that will communicate or will determine whether the intended message is conveyed successfully. So let's have a look at these three. The first and possibly the most important is the physical environment itself, and this may include air quality, noise, smell, and cleanliness. None of this was present in the first picture in my previous example. Also including is design factors such as the architecture, color, scale, materials, texture, and accessories. Then also social factors, which refers to the interaction between other customers and service employees, including factors such as their behavior, how many employees there are, and their appearance. So in terms of the examples that you can see, all these examples are perfect examples of how a physical environment can communicate with you as a customer or to your customers. A safari, breakaway, a nice hotel or restaurant, and then also being away on holiday, or maybe that's just a lodge. So these are nice examples of a pleasurable physical environment. A second element to consider is the communication from the service organization to customers and employees. By advertising, writing to customers, providing information on a website, and having insignia on delivery vehicles, service organizations are communicating with its stakeholders. So this is just an example of a website, and then you can decide whether the one on the left is something that you would prefer and support. Maybe it's a bit amateurish, or maybe if you know the company, you know that is what they stand for, or it provides their vibe or their character. And then on the right, you can see the example. It communicates a lot already in terms of the physical cues. You can already envision yourself being at that lodge or at that safari place. So it's very important, you as a service organization owner, to communicate to your customers and always update your information to current standing. And when you communicate and have delivery vehicles or anything like that, that it should match with your current business image. The third element of physical evidence is the price factor, because customers use price as an indication of the quality of these more intangible services. So, as for a service, and we've covered this extensively in this module, it's difficult to determine the value for a service as opposed to a product. So, how do you determine whether the price matches with your physical evidence? So, this is a cue that you can use. There's one example: the price of 9,000 Rand a person per night for a stay at an upmarket game lodge, such as Shamwari. That was the previous picture. This definitely communicates what prospective guests can expect. I mean, if you pay that for a night, then you should have a 7-star experience instead of a backstreet motel. Another thing that you can have a look at, this might be a physical consumption product, but in the restaurant industry, have a look at BuzzFeed. It's on YouTube, it's the channel BuzzFeed, and they have a series Worth It. This is quite interesting and it's very entertaining, where they go to different restaurants and they have a price point for 3 different menu items. Or, for example, they have rice, and then they go to a local shop, a bit more mid-market than upmarket, and then they try to determine which one of the dishes were more worth it at its given price point. And most of the times it's the cheapest or the second in the middle price that wins. It's not always where the most expensive food wins, but it has a very prestigious or prime experience attached to that experience, because it's also what you are paying for. So have a look at this. I will link this on Ifundi. And then, as I mentioned, this is very entertaining. But this is how you can determine what your service experience is worth, or the value it provides in terms of price, and how people perceive that. On the next snippet, you will see a $208 worth of cocktail. So just imagine paying $208 for one single drink. Will it be worth it? For learning outcome 2, you would want to understand the effects of servicescape on behavior. So, what is the impact of your physical environment or the servicescape on your customer's behavior? And we will get into detail now. To fully understand the impact that the physical environment or the servicescape has on customer behavior and service employee behavior fully, we need to understand the environment behavior interactions. Once this interaction or relationship is understood by managers, they will be in a better position to manage the service environment effectively in a way that will result in favorable service delivery evaluations by customers, repeat purchases, and long term loyalty. And to this end, 2 authors, Zeithamel and Bittner developed a framework to understand the influence of the servicescape or the physical environment on customer behavior and employee behavior, and this is based on the stimulus organism response theory. You can have a look at more details on this theory on page 256, but this SOR model consists of three basic components. It's a set of stimuli, an organism component, and a set of responses or outcomes. And this figure, it's figure 10.1, is also on page 257. And this is what it looks like. In this, we refer to individual behaviors, approach and avoidance behaviors. So approach going towards, avoid going away. Then social interactions. The servicescape will influence the nature and quality of your interactions. And then also the internal responses. So those are also attributed to employee responses and customer responses. But how do they get to those responses? More detail on the physical environment dimensions starting on page 262. A lot of more detail there. But in terms of your ambient conditions, you can think of the temperature. If you enter a restaurant and it's so hot, you will not feel comfortable to sit long and enjoy your meal. You will feel you need to get out of there. There's also the elements of noise, music, odor, and so forth. Then you look at the space and function. What's the layout of the service offering or delivery environment like? What are the equipment that they use, the furnishings, and so forth, and also sign symbols and the artifacts, the signage on the walls giving you clear direction of where to go, personal artifacts, the style of the decor, and so forth. Obviously, when you are fine dining, the style of the decor will be of a higher quality and standard, but if you go to the run-of-the-mill KFC, it will be all standard across all of the franchises. If it's a privately owned, individualized, lower, medium level type of restaurant, it will also not be as high because it's not the message that they are trying to communicate. It's just for the average consumers like us so that we can dine comfortably. So you will see from the physical environment dimensions, there will be internal responses on the employee side and the customer side. What happens in terms of the behavior, the outcome in terms of employees? So theirs will be, it will be attraction. They would like to work at a place that has ambient conditions. It is nice and nicely laid out, and there's nice signage, symbols, and artifacts. They will explore, they will stay longer at the organization, they will have a commitment, and they will carry out the plan of this service organization. But then, in terms of the customers, they might also find this service establishment attractive in terms of the physical environment, also stay and explore. They will spend more money because they will stay longer. They will also return because it's comfortable and was enjoyable, and then they will carry out their plan. So those are then, in terms of behaviors, the social interaction between and among customers and employees. If we look at the ambient conditions, if you are an employee working in these conditions, you will enjoy working at that place. If you are a customer, obviously you will return if the price is according to you valuable or value for money. And then this is a very nice area that you can find yourself relaxing. For the layout, if this is more of a fine dining experience, this is very laid out perfectly, the functionality is perfect, and it can operate smoothly. For signs, symbols, and artifacts, if you imagine a casino experience, yes, you spend more money and leave with nothing, hopefully with something, but everything is marked out clearly. The employees can enjoy working at the establishment because it is the ambient conditions are favorable, the layout is favorable, and the customer can also find themselves enjoying the space. And there's a lot of signs, symbols, and artifacts indicating where they can win, where they can try to win, and where they can, for example, find a restaurant. And there's the chips and the coins that they can use as artifacts and so forth. So make sure you read through the model and its description. For the third learning outcome, the physical environment as a competitive advantage. So how can you as a service organization owner, manager, enhance or create your physical environment or servicescape in such a way that customers will prefer going to your establishment than your competitors? But we have to know that the physical environment, as mentioned, is not of the same importance in all service industries. As we mentioned, a call center is not that important to be beefed up and have all of those elements present that we just went through. In some service industries, the physical environment is one of the very few ways that management can use to differentiate their service organization from that of their competitors and to build a competitive advantage with their servicescape or physical environment. The importance of the physical environment to consumers is illustrated by how frequently customers complain about it when the physical environment does not meet their expectations. If it's dirty, like in the previous example, naturally customers will complain because it's not favorable, and then obviously they will go to the competitor that has a clean setup and that is physically enhanced for customers to enjoy to a greater extent. You can have a look at several of these examples on page 264 until 265. What does all of this mean to you as a service organization? There is ample evidence to show that the way in which customers perceive the physical environment impacts on how they evaluate the service encounter and their service experience. This evaluation by the customer will, of course, also impact on their customer satisfaction and loyalty intention. So, will they come back to you or will they move to the competitor with a better servicescape? So, you as a manager, you need to understand that your customers' expectations and evaluations of your physical environment in which the service delivery takes place needs to be optimal. And once you see that something goes wrong, you have to make sure that you fix it as soon as possible and address your customers' needs. Managers should not miss the opportunity that the environment offers to create a sustainable competitive advantage.